I don't want this janitor near my office. She looked down on him, but his true identity shocked everyone. On the 10th floor, the conference room was filled with executives, all eager to hear the presentation from the new manager, Erin. She entered with the confidence of someone used to being the center of attention. Dressed in an elegant suit that accentuated her figure, Karen walked with steady steps toward the table, her piercing gaze assessing each person present. "Good morning, everyone," she began, voice firm and authoritative. "We are here to discuss strategies that will take our company to a new level. Cannot afford mediocrity." Her eyes sparkled with ambition as she gestured, emphasizing each point. "We need to unite and eliminate any distractions that may divert us from our focus. This includes, well, certain roles that do not add value to our work." As her words echoed through the room, one person's gaze shifted to the door, where Mike, the janitor, appeared. He was a simple-looking man, wearing a uniform that was already showing signs of wear. However, his demeanor carried an expression of optimism and determination. With a gentle smile, he held a bucket and a mop, preparing to clean the floor. His calmness contrasted with the agitation of the meeting. "Mike, what are you doing here?" Karen interrupted, tone shifting drastically. "You need to start moving faster. We don't have time to waste on someone who's not on our level." She gestured toward the hallway as if she wanted to expel him from her sight. At the height of the decisive meeting, Sarah, agitated, stood up and pointed at Mike, voice filled with disdain. "I don't want this janitor near my office." She looked at him with contempt, completely ignoring his presence. Or continuing the story, "I have a special request for you. If you are enjoying this and want to follow more exciting stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your subscription motivates us to create quality content. Click follow, like this video. Your participation is essential for us to keep bringing stories that make a difference. Now, let's get back to our story. The gazes of colleagues crossed, a mix of discomfort and indignation, but no one dared to speak. The atmosphere in the room grew tense, and Mike simply nodded, smile fading slightly. He did not let it affect him. "Sorry, Miss Karen. I'm just doing my job," Mike replied, the sincerity in his voice contrasting with her coldness. He slowly stepped back, trying to maintain his dignity, while murmurs among colleagues grew. No one had the courage to intervene. After Mike left, Karen continued her presentation, but a shadow of discomfort lingered over the room. "We need results, and this starts with a committed team. We can't carry unnecessary weights," she said, not realizing that her words could have deeper repercussions than she imagined. Meanwhile, Mike was dedicated to cleaning the floor, his face marked by sadness, but his eyes still shining with a glimmer of hope. He had faced many challenges in his life, and the negativity of people like Karen no longer affected him as it once did. He remembered his grandmother, who always told him, "Humility is true wealth." With this in mind, Mike focused on his work while the other employees watched from afar, feeling a mix of compassion and anger at how he was treated. "That's not right," murmured a colleague, looking at the door through which Mike had exited. "He does important work, and Karen shouldn't treat him like that." However, the words were not accompanied by actions. The fear of retaliation and the culture of silence kept everyone in their comfort zones, even if it meant ignoring injustice. The office routine continued, but the encounter between Karen and Mike left a mark on the atmosphere. The manager's disdain for someone she considered inferior began to become a topic of conversation among the employees, who, although hesitant, were starting to rally around the idea that everyone deserves respect, regardless of their roles. That day, Karen was particularly demanding. With the pressure of deadlines and her relentless pursuit of perfection, she called Mike to her office early in the morning. "Mike, I need you to clean this room until it's spotless. I don't want to see a single speck of dust when I return from my meeting," she ordered. Bold look and no room for objection. Mike, already advanced in age and with an intense work routine, nodded silently. He knew it would be a challenge, but he was determined to do his job excellently. However, Erin added a detail that made him hesitate. "And no lunch until this is perfect. I can't have any distractions." Hours passed. Mike, bent by the effort, scrubbed, polished, and tidied every corner of the room. His calloused hands and tired posture reflected the weight of the task. The clock on the wall struck noon, and the sound of laughter and animated conversations from colleagues having lunch filtered muffled through the door. Meanwhile, a young intern named Lucas watched the scene with growing discomfort. He had always admired Mike for his humility and dedication. Seeing the elderly man struggling so hard without a break deeply troubled him. Making a decision, Lucas entered Karen's office. "Mike, do you need help?" Lucas asked, his voice laden with concern. Mike looked at him, trying to force a smile. "I'm fine, Lucas. I don't want you to get in trouble." "Let me help," Lucas insisted, grabbing a cloth and starting to clean alongside Mike. Together they worked quickly, and Lucas, with his youthful energy, made a big difference. He cleaned vigorously, allowing Mike to slow down. In less time than Mike could imagine, the room was sparkling. "All done, Mike. Now go have lunch and take a little break," Lucas said, handing him a bottle of water. Mike nodded, grateful and visibly moved by the young man's kindness. "Thank you, Lucas. You have no idea how much this means to me," Mike said, stepping out to finally have his well-deserved rest and meal. Lucas watched as Mike walked away, feeling a mix of satisfaction and indignation, how Karen treated the staff. He decided that somehow he would do his best to change that culture of disrespect, starting with small acts of solidarity. Thus, while Karen continued her quest for power and control, Mike remained steadfast in his simplicity, a symbol of silent resistance, waiting for the moment when the truth about his own life and worth would become evident to everyone around him. A few days later, a new meeting was scheduled to discuss the goals for the next quarter. The room was filled with charts and projections, while the co-workers eagerly awaited Karen's instruction. With an authoritative look, she began to talk about the commitment she expected from everyone. However, her mind was far away, thinking about how she could stand out even more in the corporate environment. She wanted to make it clear there was no room for weakness in her team. Meanwhile, Mike, the janitor, was busy cleaning the next room. With a smile on his face, he was mopping the floor, listening to Karen's firm voice through the wall. At that moment, he thought about how good it was to be part of a work environment, even if his role was considered humble. For him, every clean and organized corner was a contribution to the office's success. When the meeting finally started, Karen decided to take a quick look at the room where Mike was working. She couldn't help but make a sarcastic comment upon seeing the janitor. "Look who's here. The janitor who thinks he can be part of the team," she said, laughing disdainfully. Her coworkers exchanged nervous glances, but no one dared to intervene. Mike was mopping the floor, felt the tension in the air. He looked up and, still smiling, replied, "We all have an important role to play, Karen. What matters is doing what we love." His response, though respectful, was met with an awkward silence. Karen rolled her eyes. "Just take care of what you know how to do, Mike. Janitor is what you are, not an executive. So, stay in your place," she snapped, her arrogance shining through her voice. Coworkers, uncomfortable with the situation, began to murmur among themselves, but no one had the courage to stand up and challenge the manager. After the meeting, a cup of coffee spilled on Karen's table. She looked around, frustrated, and then shouted, "Mike, come clean this up. I don't know how anyone can be so careless." The tone of her voice was cutting, and everyone in the room felt the humiliation that Mike was about to face. He approached, his heart heavy but maintaining his composure. "Sure, Karen, I'll clean it up right now," he said, with admirable calmness. The team watched in silence, admiring Mike's dignity in the face of humiliation. He bent down to clean the spilled coffee while Karen continued to make disdainful comments about his lack of ambition. "You should learn to pay more attention. This is not how you achieve success. If only you worked harder, maybe you'd be in a better position than you are," he taunted, not caring about the pain her words might cause. Mike took a deep breath and replied, "Sometimes success isn't just about positions. It's about being a good human being and treating others with respect." His words echoed in the room, and one of his colleagues, Pedro, couldn't hold back. "Karen, that's not fair. Mike does an incredible job and deserves our respect, just like all of us here. No one should be treated this way." His voice firm. Karen's expression hardened, but she didn't respond. The tension in the room escalated, and the other employees began to rally around Mike. "That's right, Pedro. No one deserves to be treated like an inferior," said Anna, a colleague who had always admired Mike's patience. "Aaron, maybe you should reflect on your behavior." Karen turned to the team, clearly irritated. "I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to do business. And Mike, if you can't behave like an adult, maybe you should reconsider your position here." Karen's words cut like a knife. Mike just smiled back, maintaining his dignity. He stood up and said, "I believe we are all here to learn and grow, Karen. That includes you." He walked away, leaving the room in heavy silence, where the tension and discomfort only increased. As Mike continued his work, the atmosphere in the office began to change. The team started to see Mike not just as the janitor, but as someone who possessed a strength and dignity that many aspired to. The respect for him grew each day, and Karen's arrogance began to seem like a burden she carried alone. The interactions between them became increasingly tense, as the discomfort mounted with each verbal attack from the manager. The situation was about to change, but no one knew that this change was closer than they imagined. The conference room was filled with nervousness and anticipation. The heavy air seemed to vibrate with the murmur of hushed conversations as the directors and executives prepared for the presentation that could Karen, with her usual air of confidence and superiority, adjusted her black blazer and looked in the mirror, admiring her reflected image. It was her time to shine, to show everyone that her vision was the only one that mattered. However, as she entered the room, her heart tightened slightly. Mike, the janitor she had so despised, was sitting next to the directors. His presence there was unexpected, and for a moment, Karen couldn't hide the surprise that crossed her face. He was dressed simply, in a dress shirt and pants that, while modest, could not hide the dignified posture he displayed. Karen forced herself to regain her composure and, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, greeted those present. "Good morning, everyone. Shall we start the meeting?" Karen said, trying to disguise the discomfort that Mike's presence caused her. One of the directors, a middle-aged man with gray hair and a penetrating gaze, stood up and interrupted Karen's presentation. "Today, we have the honor of clarifying something that many of you do not know," he began, in a serious tone that immediately captured everyone's attention in the room. "Mike, the man many of you know only as the janitor, is actually the CEO and owner of this company." A murmur of surprise echoed through the room, but the director continued before Karen or anyone else could react. For years, Mike entrusted the management of the company to other managers and CEOs, believing that his vision and values would be upheld by those he chose to lead in his place. However, a recent experience made him reconsider this approach. During a commercial flight, Mike was treated in a humiliating and disrespectful manner, simply because they did not know who he was. He was ignored by the attendants, his requests were neglected, and he was made to feel insignificant. Mike, calmly seated beside him, observed the reactions of those present. As the director continued, this experience deeply impacted him and made him reflect on how his own business was being conducted. He wondered if he could complain about something, demand compensation or respect, without knowing if his own company followed his policies and thoughts on respect and dignity. This concern haunted him. Were his employees being treated with the respect and dignity he had always valued? The director paused, allowing his words to resonate in everyone's mind. It was then that Mike decided to take on a supposedly unprivileged role within his own company, assuming the role of janitor, to closely observe how he was treated and ensure that the values of respect, collaboration, and humility were truly practiced at all levels. He wanted to see the company from the perspective of those who work in the shadows, without titles or privilege. Karen, with a pale face, looked at Mike, processing the revelation as the director continued. What he found was a series of behaviors and attitudes that did not reflect the culture he wanted to establish. He witnessed arrogance, disrespect, and a lack of empathy that directly contradicted the values he believes in. Today, he is here to share his vision and reaffirm that each of you, regardless of your position, has a crucial role in the company's success. Mike learned the hard way that true leadership does not come from a title or a high position, but from the ability to listen, learn, and treat everyone with equal respect. The director turned to Mike, who was now standing up, ready to speak. Please welcome our CEO and owner, Mike, who has something important to share. Mike looked around the room, observing the surprised and attentive faces, and began to speak with a calmness and dignity that silenced any remaining murmurs. I firmly believe that we all have an important role to play. Each of us, from the janitor to the executive, brings a unique contribution. It is vital that everyone feels valued and respected in their roles. This is the true essence of a successful company. The directors nodded, but Karen noticed discreet glances exchanged among them. Tension was palpable, and she felt that something was about to change. Karen furrowed her brow. What was happening? The room filled with murmurs, and she stood frozen, watching as Mike calmly rose. He was composed, as if he were used to being the center of attention, something Karen did not expect. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Mike said, his voice firm and clear. In recent months, we've seen a series of changes in the market, and as a team, we need to adapt quickly. I believe that collaboration and mutual respect are key to achieving our goals. Karen felt a knot forming in her stomach as she listened to Mike's words. He was so eloquent, so at ease. It was as if all his arrogance had been dismantled in seconds. The directors nodded, clearly impressed by the sincerity and clarity of his presentation. Yes, I completely agree, Mike, said another director, smiling. Your vision is exactly what we need to move forward. The entire team must unite around our goals and respect each member, regardless of their position. Karen wondered if she was dreaming. The supportive words for the janitor echoed in her mind as she tried to understand what was happening. The atmosphere in the room changed dramatically. The looks that had once been directed at her now focused on Mike, and the reverence he received made her furious. How do you see each of us playing a role in implementing these changes? Asked one of the directors, making Karen squirm in her chair. She wanted to interrupt to regain control of the situation. The words seemed to have vanished from her mind. Mike smiled, his humility contrasting with the arrogance that Karen had displayed. I believe everyone has an important role. Each of us, from the janitor to the executive, brings a unique contribution. It is vital that everyone feels valued and respected in their roles. Karen swallowed hard. What was happening here? She felt more and more isolated, as if an invisible wall separated her from the others. The meeting continued. Mike stood out, answering questions confidently and providing valuable insights. Meanwhile, the manager began to perceive the situation in a new light. Mike's words hit her like a punch to the stomach. She, who had always considered herself superior, now saw the truth. Her arrogance and disdain for him were not only unjust, but also profoundly ignorant. When the meeting came to an end, the atmosphere in the room was one of respect and admiration. Karen, on the other hand, felt lost in her own thoughts. What would happen now? She had a clear sense that the dynamic had changed forever, and that the great lesson about humility and respect was about to unfold in a way she could never have imagined. When the meeting finally ended, the atmosphere in the room was one of respect and admiration. Karen, on the other hand, felt lost in her own thoughts. Without waiting for everyone to leave, she quickly stood up and went straight to Mike. Her steps were quick, almost desperate, and when she got close to him, her voice came out almost in a trembling whisper. Mike, please, I need to talk to you. I'm so sorry for what I did. I was arrogant and insensitive. Please forgive me, Karen pleaded, her eyes welling with tears. Mike looked at her calmly, his expression serene and understanding. Karen, you don't need to worry, he said in a gentle but firm tone. You will not be fired. Karen felt a brief sense of relief. The tension was still present on her face. Mike continued, however, you will be reassigned to an environment where you can learn what you lack most in your resume, which is humanity. She frowned, confused. Reassigned? What does that mean? I want you to spend some time working in areas that you may have never given much importance to. You will work side by side with the people who make our daily lives possible, but who are often invisible to those in higher positions. You will learn about their stories, their struggles, and their contributions. It's an opportunity to understand the true value of respect and empathy, Mike explained. Aaron swallowed hard, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. I accept. I know I need to change. Thank you, Mike, for giving me this chance. Mike nodded, his gaze firm yet encouraging. True leadership doesn't come from titles and position. It comes from the ability to understand and value each person in their individuality. Use this experience to grow as a professional and, more importantly, as a human being. Karen took a deep breath, realizing that this was a new beginning for her. From that moment on, she knew she had much to learn, and all that was left was for her to be willing to accept the challenge. Recognizing the kindness and courage of Lucas, the young intern who helped him when he needed it most, Mike decided that Lucas deserved a greater chance. During a meeting with the directors, Mike spoke about the importance of recognizing and valuing those who demonstrate empathy and respect for their colleague. Lucas, Mike said, calling the intern to the front of the room, was the only one who stood up against the injustice towards Karen and helped me when I was overwhelmed. He showed that true leadership comes from the heart and the courage to do what is right, even when no one else is willing to do it. The directors, impressed by Lucas's attitude and Mike's words, unanimously agreed with Mike's suggestion. Lucas would be transferred to a new role, working directly alongside Mike. He would have the opportunity to learn not only the technical skills necessary to grow in the company, but also the fundamental values of respect, humility, and empathetic leadership. On the first day of his new position, Lucas met with Mike at the beginning of the workday. "Thank you, Mike. I don't know how to express my gratitude for this opportunity," Lucas said, his eyes shining with excitement and gratitude. Mike smiled, placing a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Lucas, you deserve this. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more inspiring content like this, don't forget to follow our channel. Subscribe to receive updates on new videos, leave your like to show your support, and share this video with your friends and colleagues. Your participation is essential for us to continue bringing stories that make a difference. See you next time.